Welcome to First Things First. I'm Brooke and my pronouns are she and her.
I'm Matty Mills. My pronouns are he and him. And before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. And for me today, that's the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation.
And for me, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Let's get into it,
Let's
Matty.
get into it. How are ya, Balenciaga?
Yeah, has Balenciaga been cancelled? I don't care because this is a $400 hat and I'm wearing it.
I remember when you were going through your Balenciaga phase.
What do you mean? I've only got 2 items from them. What do you mean a phase?
It was a phase. I feel like you were like putting them on the gram. You like must have just purchased them. It was about 2 years ago. Do you remember?
Years
Your
ago.
bag that I wore to Fashion Week.
Oh, okay, my tote bag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't I wear it?
I still got it.
Didn't I wear it to Fashion Week at one point?
You maybe did. But you know what? Actually talking about Balenciaga and I guess having expensive things, those were the things that I bought because of like huge moments. So every time I look at those things, I'm like, oh yeah, that was when I did this.
Yes.
Because I only ever buy like a luxury thing.
Yeah.
Could be like not even luxury. It could be like fucking $50 hand soap, but that's still luxe in my eyes.
Totally. 100%.
Aesop is expensive.
Oh, you rich if you can afford Aesop. Ain't nobody fucking buying Aesop in my household. Oh, speaking of cheap things.
I went from luxe things to cheap things.
Girl,
what I was going to say is
tell me.
Where having luxe things reminds me of big moments in my life. So I'm always like, oh, I would never own this shit. Like I would be like, what the hell? I just bought a $400 hat. But
do you ever wear
whatever.
fake designer stuff?
I used to when I had no money.
Yeah.
For sure. Like get a little fake Prada bag. Yeah, no worries.
Love it. I've always thought, oh, well, if I can't afford it, I'm not going to do the fake thing. But then I went to Bali and I brought Prada sunglasses that were like literally $10. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a bougie black fellow when it comes to like buying fancy things. Like I like fancy experiences, but not tangible things. So I'm not like going to hunt down a bag or, but I remember one time when I picked you up from the airport and you had like, I'm pretty sure was it an LV trunk? What was that?
Yeah, it was a Louis Vuitton carry-on. I still have it.
Ooh.
I only take it for business.
Yes.
It's funny, right? When you have those sort of like big brandy things, like this is pretty capsule wardrobe, like having like a Balenciaga hat or like a tote that's just got the one word on it, right?
Yeah.
But it's still brandy and it still gives off that impression of like, oh
Luxe.
yeah, like that's, and
Yeah.
that Louis Vuitton carry-on, I bought it for myself when I landed my book deal. And it was just a reminder, like, and I have like, you know, other little subtle things that I enjoy and love as well that I bought when I published my book and when I finished it. It's just for memories to like know when those momentous things happen. And I look at that and I'm like, because they have a lifetime warranty as well, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
So Louis Vuitton, you know, you buy something and if it's damaged, you just take it back and they give you like, you know, it's a lifetime warranty. So, but I'm a little bit the same with you in terms of like, I'd much more rather tangible experiences rather than luxe things. But I think for me, like, I've forced myself to celebrate the wins because I don't think I have done that previously and I have had regrets of not doing that. I think you have to celebrate these big achievements and moments in your life. And if that's how you do it, then that's how you do it. Like, I don't party like that often. So I would rather buy something like something that I'd use and have for a while or for a long time than do that.
I love that. Well, I think both of us, we grew up without, you know, obviously without the fancy things. And I remember thinking that like having, you know, a bedside table was luxe. Like,
or a lamp.
Or a lamp in a room. Like, oh my God, that's so fancy. You know, like having those little things that just made you feel like you didn't live on the wrong side of the tracks.
Oh my God. Actually, it's so crazy because I think about my life when I was younger and like all the things that I have now and I just get so bloody content. Like I posted, I don't know if you saw my video the other day where I was like folding washing.
Listening to Archie Roach.
And I was having one of those moments I was like, holy fuck, this is my life. Like, how the fuck did I get here? And I guess that was our momentum from last episode when we were talking about healing. It's just like you spin out and you're like, how? Like,
Yeah.
what?
I had one of those moments this morning, actually. I've just come, as you can see,
Yeah.
I'm in my like business attire. I came from an event and there was this,
Yeah.
I was looking at these products that were made from this Indigenous artist, Kira Lee Shields, and she's got this, whole range and collection that's just been launched in Kmart. So if you're Mob, go in and get it because it's fucking deadly.
I
But-
always buy the things from Kmart that
Yes.
are mob artists
Yeah,
and
yeah.
owned. Like, I'm like, yes.
But there was this like girl on the table who I was looking at these things and she came over to me and she's like, "Hi, can I get a photo?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then she brought her agent over and said, "Oh, when you walked in, she pointed you out and she was like, 'Oh, this is Matty,' and started like basically gassing me up to her agent." And when I left that event this morning, I was like, you forget that you have impact, or you forget that like you've landed at a point in your career where people look up to you, or Mob feel inspired by what you do. And I'm like, I was leaving there today and I was like, oh, how the fuck did I get here? Like I literally walk into a room and some girl is like, "Oh my God, that's Matty," and it's like it's cool, but it's also like you think, wow, it was like there's been a lot to get to this point, but also you sort of forget that it doesn't feel any different, like
Yeah.
I always
agree because you're still the same person.
You're still the same person, yeah.
Are still so
Yeah.
genuine, so authentic.
Yeah.
Like live your life with the same morals, the same values. Like align yourself with good things. Like that doesn't change. So you feel like your life changes, but not.
the sense of who you are doesn't. But like I remember when I was younger and I was a young fella and I was living in Tamworth and I had these big dreams and I was like, oh, one day I'm going to feel like this when I get to those dreams. Bam. Doesn't feel like it. It absolutely doesn't feel like it. Like I think I've said this in the past, but relishing in the moments along the journey is like the best feeling, instead of thinking that when you get to a certain point, it's going to be like, oh my God, I made it. I felt like this because I got this, or I felt like this because I had that interaction. It just isn't the case. So like we have to like live in the moment, I suppose, and be a little bit more, I don't know, present. I think that was the little lesson that I got this morning from that little interaction.
Yeah, I feel like I actively try to be present in every moment that I'm in.
Yep.
And I can feel it sometimes when I don't know, I feel if I'm not present through my eyes, which is a bit weird. Like I can't focus into the room, into the space. Like I actually have to generally like look around and see things and then I'll come back. But if I'm not present, I'm really not there.
Yeah.
And I've been having some really great deep conversations about fame and your childhood and how when you are a child and when you grow up and aspiring for all those things and then you kind of get them, right? So so I even think like sometimes when people are like, oh, famous Brooke, or like, aren't you famous? And like kids at school and Mitts, they're always like, Miss, are you famous? And like, just like that word just makes me feel like I'm cringe because it's like, oh, that's not me. Like I'm like living my dreams and doing what I love. And yes, I was on TV years ago, but I'm not famous because I think famous for me would be like an A-list celebrity, right? Like that sense of fame that
and that level would come with a different feeling for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't really, like I'd like to get to some level of that, but not entirely, if that makes sense. I don't even aspire for that. I take that back, actually. I'm like, oh, yeah, that gives me like, because if I can't go outside the way that I'm dressed and like without people outside my house and getting papped, or like can't even go down to the local milk bar and just grab a fucking thing of milk, then I'm like, I don't really think I would enjoy that.
No.
Like I want that privacy and that. Yeah. You know what, actually, can I tell you about a conversation that I had?
Yeah.
I love basketball. We spoke about this last week. And Tones and I is the #1 ticket holder.
Okay. Like got the keys to the city, but like keys to basketball.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
And I had this really beautiful conversation with Tones. I could not tell you. Like it was so private, so delicate, and so intimate in terms of like what she's trying to achieve. And I was feeling so inspired by her and her way of like dealing with this fame, because she had the #1 song, right? Dance Monkey was Billboard like one chart.
It's like, still the most streamed song on the planet.
Exactly. And the thing is, when I was having this conversation with her, it was like just two girlfriends at a bar.
Yeah.
Like I love her. Like I'm obsessed with her, but in a way that's like, I'm just so inspired that she's stayed so genuine throughout this whole process.
Yeah.
She's acknowledges like where she's at, and she's like, I don't fake to be anything else. Like
Yep.
I have anxiety. Like she's like, I have anxiety just like everyone else does. Like I'm not this like person who's like really confident and like out there. Like I perform because I love my music and I love music in general and I want to change people's lives. But I don't say that I'm a life changer to other people. Like, if you connect with it and it changes your life, that's what she loves.
Yep.
And I think that's such a genuine role model to like look up to because they're not fake.
Yep.
And like, I think there is some sense of like fakeness that does come with fame and being famous, but it's like you can genuinely still stay true to yourself 100%. And still stay genuine.
Yeah.
You know who another person is that is amazing as well that deals with fame and she's like really up there with being A-list is Zendaya.
Oh, yeah. I just ran into her at the premiere of Challenges Sydney.
Right?
Yeah.
And she did a thing with Vogue and I've been watching a few videos since Challenges is just sort of about to come out.
Yeah.
And she just like acknowledges that she's anxious all the time in videos. And I just love that's like such a normal thing. Like again with anxiety, it's such a normal thing. We all experience it at different points in our life. And if you haven't, God, kudos to you. But she's like, I'm really shy. Like, I'm an actress or actor and I'm doing all these great films. But when I'm not doing that, I'm fucking shy. And I'm like, oh, I love that because it's just like so normal.
I had this conversation with my partner like 2 nights ago and it's not to like compare at all levels of fame, but it's like I was at the gym and this lady came up to me and she said, oh, hi, Matty. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to pretend that I know her. This is what I do. Hello, hi, how are you?
You do the whole
nice to see you.
Nat Bass thing where it's like, so good to see you again. You've never seen them.
And you know what? And I looked at her and then I changed gears and I was like, where have we met? And she goes, oh, no, I just know you from Instagram and you're friends with this person. She started listening to me. I was like, how? Like, well, then come up to me and introduce yourself. Don't go, hey, Matty, as if we're friends. And then I went home and I was like, to my partner, I was like, you know what? Like, as much as I'm ambitious and I'm fucking chasing success 100%, but the flip side to that is that I'm a character whenever I'm in a workspace and it's like authentic to the role that I need to play in the job. Honestly. And it's like a protective boundary thing. It's like when the podcast is a bit different, but when I'm on air or if I'm acting or if I'm doing a red carpet at a premiere, it's like another version of myself that is like a protective layer to who I actually am. And then the inside of me is really shy. And I was having this moment where I was like, you know what? Like I want success. I want to, achieve the things that I'm set out to do, but I don't want the recognition and I don't want to walk down the street and have people notice me. So it's like...
Okay, humble king, Jesus.
Well, and you
deserve that recognition though. Like it's not
but
look at all the things that you've achieved. Like not many people could do that.
Like, well, I feel like the recognition is fine in a work capacity when I'm at work. But like when I'm in my personal life and like say if I get to the level of success where people start to notice you on the street, like, you have paparazzi, I would fucking hate that. It would actually stop me from leaving my house. So
it would give you social anxiety. And that's exactly what I had post-Bachelorette when I had paps outside me and David's house when we were living in South Yarra. And it was uncomfortable. It literally made me feel like really ill and very sick. And it gave me social anxiety. And that's not okay because that's a breach of privacy. And I think you get to a level of fame where there's such an entitlement to your life that you have those boundaries crossed with privacy. And I just don't think I think at a stage of like where I'm at in terms of my life and what I've achieved, I still remain private and I still have that. And I think you have that and we love that because we're still figuring out life with that. Privacy shouldn't like be crossed, I think that's a thing that I just value. I think is privacy and having boundaries in place and being able to step into those places, like you said, and have your mask on in some sense, but then be able to pull that off at home and like be with your people and be like, oh, this is who I am normally.
Yeah. I feel like it's also about like we're here at this position in our lives and sometimes you have to remind yourself, and I find that I'm doing this recently, is like I'm reminding myself that I'm at the position in my life, where I wanted to be. It's not like I'm here and I didn't want it. You have to remember what younger Maddie or like our dreams were when we were younger, and think, oh, okay, well, this is what we asked for.
This is where we're at.
This is where we're at. This is, the journey.
Talking about when we were younger, because okay, let's take a little walk down memory lane and rewind back to however young you want to go back to, right? And talk to, I guess, what your aspirations were. Like, I think mine were very basic necessities. Like, when I first started doing therapy, there was a hierarchy of needs that my therapist presented to me.
Yeah.
And the first one is like security and safety. And, and it kind of
support
goes up
system,
and up. And I feel like I could look right now currently at my life and look at the hierarchy of needs and be like, oh, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, and that is such an achievement because years ago when I first started therapy, I could not even do the bottom tier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really hard to look at. But my younger aspirations were to get security and stability in a home. Mm-hmm. It seems odd, because some youth just naturally have that and have that security with parents. But we didn't have that. So that was our aspiration, is to get that home and to have a roof over our head.
Yeah.
The next thing, obviously, for me was like food and getting food in my cupboard and having enough money to actually provide, because I was in my 20s and I was still struggling and I was living off $20 paycheck to paycheck to get that. And now I have that and I think, fuck, that's so crazy that I could literally go down the shop and do whatever and get whatever and not think about it, you know? And I find myself now pulling myself up in two ways. Like, I'll be in two minds where I'm like, I always go for the cheaper option, even though I want the more expensive one. And I'm like, oh, no, like just, and I'll settle for going for the cheaper option because that's what's instilled in me to this day is like, oh, it's on sale. Like I should get it, save money.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, no, I can afford A2 milk, you know?
Love it. Not that black and gold shit.
Well, that's what I mean. And so I've had to like relearn behavior as well because my needs are different. And, that probably will never change. Like I'll always be super frugal and I love that about myself.
Yeah.
But, different aspirations, minus those needs. Like let's go to other things like career and fantasy aspirations maybe. I've always wanted a colour coordinated wardrobe.
Love it. Love it. Okay.
Clothes.
Yeah.
I love homewares. So having like nice styled house.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in that. And books. I've always wanted books. And I have books.
And you have books. You've ticked off all the things.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
I look at younger diaries of myself and I think I'll read them now and then when I'm doing some writing and I'm like, oh my God. I used to write down I wish I had lots of money and daydream about how I would want so much money. But I think it's not even the money. It's just being comfortable enough to go down and just not have to stress about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like when I was younger, my constant thought was that I wanted to make it out of the life that I had been given. And I remember always thinking it was a daily thing where I would think, okay, this is temporary. This world is temporary. Whether it was being in foster care or whether it was dealing with my mum who had, massive addiction issues and would literally drag us around. If you were a bird and you were looking over the suburb of Claymore, you would have seen this mother duck drunk 95% of the time, dragging her little chicklings, whatever they're called, around the suburb. Going from house to house and just, following this mum around. That's the visual I have of my childhood with my mum, and then begging her to go home and be like, hey, can you please just go home? I remember one time I was such a little shit. She wouldn't go home, so I chucked a brick through the window.
You knew what the right thing was to do.
Chuck the brick through the window, which would make them kick her out of the party and she'd have to go.
Well, that's so funny because that's such a mature, I guess, not the brick.
And you know what she did? She chased me down the street, wanted to flog me, and I had to go home by myself. She stayed.
So it didn't work. Is what you're
saying. It didn't work, but she ended up coming home. God. But it was I just remember wanting her to come home all the time and be home, and she was never home. It was always just us boys following her around and just wanting to, find some sort of stability. And it was and I remember as a little kid, I used to have to steal money from her or her friends when they were drunk so that we could eat. Like I remember when I was a little kid having to go through my mum's stuff to find a few dollars so that we could eat because she just wouldn't care. She'd literally be out of her mind pissed and like, you know, having a great time and not worried about food. And like 2-minute noodles aren't going to fucking...
I know, there's only so much you can live off. Like there's no nutrition.
2-minute noodles every night is not a meal. But...
did do it.
That was like then. My big dream when I was little. I was like, I'm going to make it out of this. And then in all honesty, the foster care was a bit of respite. It was a respite from poverty. And there were obviously hurdles that went into the foster care system and like there were tough times in there and stuff that we went through as kids and being split up and stuff. But there's something about stability that you can't put a price on. So even though I didn't have my mum, there was something about waking up every day and going to school with a full lunchbox that made me feel like, oh, well, this is better than what I had. Sad to think about that, but like I really felt like in foster care that I was, you know, it was sort of the life that I wanted without the love, you know?
I agree. Like I connect with that sentence so much because like I have had some full circle moments, right? Especially with foster care and child protection. Like we constantly got removed from our house. And
same.
Some memories are so blurry that I can't because we were a bit too young. But then there's some memories that I distinctively remember. And I had, you know, maybe one good lot of foster parents that I remember, Ken and Barb, and I write about them in my book, Big Love. Like, I think they're probably passed away now. Like, Ken was getting pretty old and still remember his birthday, 7th of July, 7 of 7. So I do remember some things about that relationship and what they gave us, which was stability, even though there was some, you know, religious base to it where we would go to church every Sunday and
get a feed.
I didn't really, you'd get a feed and like, you know, because...
Hear the good Lord's word.
But it's so crazy because even like in women's refuges when we would sometimes be taken to as well. Like I don't know if you lived in a refuge for a bit. Yeah. So
I shared a story just quickly on the women's refuge. I shared a story with my ex about this, and it was the fact that one night my mum was going like insane. Like she was angry at us kids because she was obviously having withdrawals, and she came in the room with a knife, but she wasn't like going to do anything, but she started pointing the knife at us, like this big knife. And obviously in the women's refuge, they have cameras. So the lady who lives on the bottom floor, she had seen that my mum walked in the room with a knife going crazy and came up and like called the police. And the police came and it was this whole thing of the lady thinking that my mum was going to like stab us. And like we had to explain to them that she wasn't trying to stab us. It was like so traumatic
like,
as
like
kids.
Normal-ish to like us and like how their behaviour is.
She came in and she was going crazy and she was doing this, but like it wasn't like I'm going to kill you. It was like I'm cutting something in the kitchen and running into the room to go. But who knows, you know, drug-induced psychosis as well. Like I remember she would have those moments. So who knows? But I was just telling my partner about that like women's refuge experience because we went to many. We went to at least 4 or 5.
I honestly could not tell you how many we... Yeah, to be
I was
fair,
in one in 9/11.
Wow.
When 9/11 happened, we watched it from a women's refuge.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
There's been moments where people have come in our life and sort of shown us a life that we actually do want for ourselves, right? It's like that stability and like, I guess you sort of admire like the normality of it and you're like, oh, like that's what life should be like. And, you know, you aspire for getting that and then we have it sort of now and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great. Like, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
This is why, I guess, why we are who we are and like what we do is to sort of aspire and inspire to be other people because like when I was younger, I think I was maybe like 8 or 9, right? And we knew when child protection were coming to our house to like grab us because we could tell by the plates of the car. Remember they were blue plates? Were they blue plates when...
No, like, but they were all... We always knew and my mum bashed one of the ladies.
My mum also bashed one of the ladies too. So.
They never came back for a while after that.
Well, okay, I'll make the long story short, but pretty much like, we were constantly taken and we just kind of knew at times when child protection would rock up because of the white car and blue plates and it's a government car, so we knew straight away, like when that car rocks up, Mum was like, bang, hide straight away. And I wrote about this as well because it's one of my distinct memories. And pretty much like we would hide either in this like little storeroom or in the pantry cupboard away from them. And fast forward that and remembering that feeling, right? Like that holding on to that and like feeling that, like that fear of like these people taking us away from our home, even though our home, you know, at times could be very toxic in ways, but home is home and mum is mum and nan is nan, you know, like they're the ones that like you want to be with, like at the end of the day, like that is where your community and your culture is, and that's where the love was, even regardless of mum suffering from addiction. I never defined her by her addiction. I never defined, you know, my sister by her addiction. Like their mum and nan, sister, family, culture, you know. Yeah. I just thought, you know, they had a pretty tough life. So fast forward, you know, I started working in youth work and I worked my way up. I went from local like not-for-profits, local government, state government, started working for the Department of Education, which was in community, and we were working with families and young people that were in the care system. Anyways, I was working for Department of Ed, so obviously we had a government car, a white car with blue plates. And I just remember, like, the feeling of that. And I felt so, like, when I was working, you know, as a coordinator for a community service program called the Full Service School, I'd rock up to families' houses and I just knew instantly that fear of what they would have as well, because I know their history. Yeah. And so I was like, I cannot repeat this same cycle of instilling this like fear in these children's like lives. Like I was like, I'm not doing it. Yeah. And so I would park the car around the corner and I would walk up to the house and all I would have is my keys and my phone. And that was it. Yeah. And my ID and stuff. Yeah. Because I wouldn't take a folder or wouldn't take anything like that, because I wouldn't want the parents or the families to know, like, I'm just there to see how you're doing, to catch up, to have a yarn, have a cup of tea if you have some, like. Yeah. And I just remember that being a really big full circle moment for me in my career, being like, holy fuck, am I working on the other side of a system, an institution that has instilled that same fear? Am I repeating that same fucking thing? And I remember being like, I can't do this job. Like, I can't. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And I also think, like you touched on a little bit earlier about how it's so important for kids to stay with family because culture. And I have a tug of war with, I suppose, the blanket theory that kids need to stay with
kids belong with family. Yeah.
I think kids belong with family. I do. And I feel like that's number one. But you also need to make sure the kids' needs are first. You know, like I have an experience being taken from my mum and put in the foster care that was a positive experience for my family because our lives changed. There had to be a hard lever that was pulled for our lives to be changed. And yes, we ended up back with my dad and our life, you know, changed for the better. And that doesn't happen to every kid who goes in the foster care system. But I think that kinship care is super important, where kids get to, you know, be placed with other family members. That's like second option if they can't be with their immediate family. Kinship care is second. Then if they can't be with kinship carer, a First Nations carer is another great option. And then removal. But I struggle with the theory that kids must remain with family, because for me, if that family does not support them, or if that family doesn't have a level
positive impact of them, or
just a level of stability that is needed or care that is needed, the kid has to be put first. And I have an experience where people say, oh, how was your foster care experience? Yeah, there were some challenges in there and we were moved around and split up, but that was still better than what it was with my own family. And
I so agree with that. Like, I have also had that confliction in many times, especially working in the system and then being a part of the system. Like, I see exactly your view on that, because I personally think it was the people that I had an opportunity to meet through that removal, and then through, I guess, even just having a bedroom and having clean clothes on the back. Like, I didn't have that opportunity at home. Like, I didn't have those at home. And just having that in somewhere else, it was like, okay, well, this is kind of sort of the norm. Like, this is what I'll aspire to, and this is what it should be like. And even though I went back home and I loved being back home, I was like, no, well, that is the standard. And I think that comes through exposure, right? Exposure to those things where it's like a different lens and a different perspective. And it comes through that, you know, that role modeling and that stability. And I just think, like, I agree with you in so many levels because, like, as much as I would have, I went through the system and my dad was fighting for custody.
Yeah.
And nearly won based off something that my mum, oh my God, I get so emotional about this. Fuck. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh. It just sits so, that moment just like sits so heavy on my chest because it's like, oh, fuck it. Like, I'll just,
It's okay. Take your time.
these are things like I feel, I never want to blame my mum. This is the thing. I never want to, like, she's not around to stick up for herself, bless her. God.
Yeah, don't
like,
go and run her under the bus. No.
But when I was like 9 years old, my mum, like, I was so hungry. Like, this breaks my little heart, but I was so hungry that I was like begging my mum to, like, I needed food. Like, I was so hungry, like my stomach was hurting. And my mum obviously was coming off a bender anyway. So I went into her room where she was asleep and I went in and I like asked her and I was like begging her for food or like money and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mum's, you know, reaction wasn't to be like, oh, like I'll get up and make you something or you know, find you something. Her reaction was to like literally like kick me across the fucking room.
Yeah, I remember reading
And I remember this feeling
book.
because I was like, I was like, who would do that? Like, who would do that to someone? And I think, no, but my mum was struggling at that time. She was obviously dealing with something and she didn't know how to take care of something else other than herself in that time. And I'm like, I don't ever want to blame her for that and I never want to blame myself. And I have removed that blame from myself because for a long time I was like, oh, I shouldn't have gone in there. I shouldn't have done that and I shouldn't have done this. And that like sits heavy on me. But I've released myself of that because there's no point holding on to it. But I was, you know, I went back to my dad's and my back was sore and I was like complaining about my back and I was in agony.
Yeah.
And what had happened is that I had damaged my tailbone.
Yeah.
And my dad took me to the hospital and I had x-rays done and they found out like I'd done something, like I cracked my coccyx or something like that. And you know, that's a form of, unfortunately, that's child abuse.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my mum anything to happen to my mum, so I never said anything. But my dad was like, no, like never. But there has been some parts of where my dad has been also emotionally abusive, but because it's not physical abuse, it doesn't have the same impact. And this is a confliction that I had when I was younger. It's like, as much as I like felt that the need, like my mum, you know, had done what she did and my dad was like fighting for custody because he thought the right thing was, well, I need to get her out of that environment. I remember going through all the court cases and having to be interviewed for like hours and hours of fucking interviews and statements from the department. And in the end, when they asked me the decision or like what I'd want to do, I was like, I don't want to be with my dad. Like, I want to go with my mum.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be with my mum.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the best decision I made. Like, even though, regardless of what my mum did, like, I just think staying in community is what I needed. And I listened to my gut and that's what I wanted. I didn't want to live with my dad because I think, like, I would be a completely different person if I did.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that my dad had everything. I didn't role model my dad. My dad is not a person to role model.
Yeah.
My mum and my nan at least have values and morals and community and culture that I had instilled in me, regardless of whatever was happening in their lives.
Yeah.
My dad had none of that. And it's not to say that my dad's a horrible person, but he wasn't a real person that I felt a positive connection to. And regardless of my mum, I wanted to be with her. Like, regardless of what she did, I didn't define her ever by her actions sometimes. Like, I could see through it and I could see she had a good heart.
Yeah, she's battling a bigger issue, you know.
A bigger demon.
Her own demons. And
exactly.
Yeah, I think that very, very forgiving as a kid too, you know. I think that we, you know, love our parents so much that all we need from them is that in return. And when we are forgiving, it's because we want them to love us, you know, that we want them to see us like little sponges to them. But I have an interesting relationship with my mum too, because for years I was always the go-to person to fix everything for her. And I would say over the last 3 years I've taken a big step back, and I'm like, you know what? I've put up a wall, and for
boundaries.
years,
Not a wall. I think you've put boundaries.
Yeah,
in
I put up
place.
boundaries in place. For years, I did everything I could to help her. And like one of the really heartbreaking moments is that once we got taken off her and she was put into jail, and when I went to visit her for the first time in jail, I walked up to her and she looked straight through me like she didn't notice me. Like she looked straight through me like I wasn't her son and just kept walking. And I was like, Mum.
Why do you think she did that?
I have no idea. It was like sort of 4 or 5 years since she'd seen us. Like it was traumatic for me. I was like, hello, I'm like your son. But hello, I'm here. But I definitely feel like boundaries are key when it comes to like healing my own inner child too, because my mum will walk the fuck over me when she can, and she can be mean. Like my mum will cut you with her words. I remember one time she said to me, well, it's not my fault you're gay. And I'm like, fucking bitch.
See, this is the thing. I know.
Bitch. And it was at Christmas. It was at Christmas.
Oh, see, that relationship that you kind of have with your mum, I have with my biological dad. I have a beautiful adopted dad, by the way. Like, everyone, you know, he came in for the interview. Everyone know him. Everyone knows him. But my fucking dad told me that I was conceived on a fucking drug dealer's floor. And I'm like, who the fuck tells their 15-year-old daughter that?
Oh.
That is mental.
Nasty.
And I just think, fuck these. As much as I think, like, unfortunately, you can't choose your fucking family and you can't choose what life you were born to. You can always change what you're going to do with that. And I think, like, you can look at people and just be like, you were not meant to be a parent. Not saying that your mum was not meant to be a parent, but my dad, and the thing is, it's not just me that thinks this about my dad. My siblings who share the same father think the exact same thing. Like, sometimes people have children and they're just not meant to have children. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I think that, you know, even though we went through a lot of stuff when we were younger and who, you know, with the people that we were when we were younger has really led us to be in this moment where we get to create our own futures because we are resilient. We get to sort of carve out that path and we will. But I want to say to anyone listening, like all the young people who listen to our podcast, like the future is a beautiful thing. And no matter what you're going through now, know that you can change your life and the direction of your life. And the things that you want actually aren't that far away from you if you set your mind to them and try and achieve them.
And perspective is everything. Like, I guess, like, don't give up in any sense. Like, and manifestation, like, I think, you know, I spent so many years in my younger life just, like, manifesting but daydreaming. Like, I used to think it was daydreaming, but I think manifesting the life that I did want for myself and just know that it is possible to go out and get that. And, you know, when you do get here, it's exciting and you have to sort of pinch yourself in the moments, but never stop, like, aspiring for more because you're so capable of doing anything. Like we pinch ourselves to get to this moment, but we'll continue to do that when we're like 30 and 40 and 50. Like I'll be like 40 and I'm like, how the fuck did I get to 40? How the
fuck did I get here?
You know, like, like my mum died when she was 34. My sister died when she was 33. I'm like nearly 30 and I think, fuck, like I'm only just getting started. My life is only just getting started. And I think, wow, like, you know, their lives were just too short taken. And I think I just want to live in every moment of every day and be present because it's like they didn't get to do that. And I feel very, very honoured and privileged to be in this position to do that and live life and to hopefully, you know, still inspire young people to do the exact same thing. And it's like little Matty and little Brookie will be like, well, I reckon they would have been besties.
They would have been best friends, 100%. Yeah. They would have been two little runner-mucks running around like,
Imagine if we were 12 years old together, like doing a podcast as we were 12 years old.
The universe did us a favour. We kept away from each other until we were mature enough to be friends because if we were two little 12-year-olds, we would have probably burnt the world down by now. We would have been so frustrated in our experiences that we would have got together, both of our minds, and just fucking, you know, dominated. Running the mark. But look, our listeners have heard from both of us and our experiences as young people. We wanted to hear from other people. So we're going to connect with, you know, mob across the country and get different perspectives on what it's like to live as a young black fella in different parts of our country. We're talking, you know, city, regional and remote areas. We want to understand, you know, what are the barriers to some people's success and what are some experiences that are stopping people from living out their best dreams, because that's what we want you mob to do. And this is off the back of obviously hearing about all the Alice Springs curfew stuff. It's a way of us being able to share stories and hopefully inspire the next generation. But
yeah, exactly.
That's all we have time for today. If you like us, leave us a little rating and a little review.
And if you want us to cover anything on the pod, honestly, just reach out via our socials. My handle is at Brooke.Blend and Maddie's handle is at It's Maddie Mills. And we'll see you next week on the episode.
See you. Bye.